On July 7th, 2022, I began sharing some of the most intriguing, strange, and even disturbing posts from r/TipOfMyTongue, a subreddit dedicated to solving people's trivial mysteries. An obscure, creepy show or movie you could never find. An unidentified or lost piece of media. Some childhood trauma-inducing thing you saw on the internet. Well, I shared the ones that sat unsolved, hoping that bringing attention to them would result in them being resolved. And there have been plenty of entries featured in these videos that get correctly answered by viewers. But that isn't always the case. Over the past 3 years, I've released 7 volumes of this series. And I think it's finally time to compile the ones that still haven't been solved. Yes, this is a lazy compilation. But hear me out. I'm really passionate about shining a spotlight on lesser-known topics. It keeps me awake at night, knowing these were never figured out. Also, disclaimer. The first few posts, I sound completely different, can't pronounce anything worth shit, and have terrible audio quality because I used to record and edit on my phone. I thought about doing it all over, but I wanted to keep it real and authentic because after all, it's a part of my YouTube journey. If you cannot stand the extremely amateur editing style and audio, I will put a timestamp to when I got a mic and computer. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and enjoy 2 hours of Reddit's lost media mysteries that maybe you'll be able to find or solve. Let's get right into it. A horrific anime ad about a teen getting crushed inside a suitcase I saw in 2013 on my friend's laptop. The suitcase gradually became smaller. OP starts their post by insisting this is not a creepypasta, even though people might not believe them due to the go for a punch fiasco that they're somewhat aware of. They go on to list the events that take place in the advertisement, starting with a guy that looks like L from Death Note who is crying and wearing a business suit. He's inside a dark room with a stone floor and a suitcase is on the ground. The suitcase is big enough for him to fit in, so he enters and curls up into it. A text-to-speech begins to narrate. The subtitles read something along the lines of "very bad sadness." Next she reads "this happens" as the suitcase begins to shrink. It shows you the perspective from the interior and the guy proceeds to repeat life. This for some reason causes him to smile, but shortly after he is crushed by the shrinking suitcase. His bones rip apart and eyes pop out. The ad ends with the suitcase as a speck. The comments were filled less with meaningful suggestions and more with people saying this was definitely just an attempted creepypasta, despite OP's pleas that it wasn't. It was mentioned how their post history included them wishing there'd be a creepypasta revival, but I don't think this necessarily rules it out as a fake post. I'd find it likely that they had actually seen something like this, but decided to basically milk it to try to gain attention to it since it is a good candidate for an internet mystery. Whether real or an attempted Saki-san-obashi ripoff, I felt it was an interesting post to include. I ultimately decided to since I don't find it unbelievable or far-fetched. This person said they didn't understand why people were saying it was fake since it doesn't even sound that creepy, and I somewhat agree. I think OP accidentally made it sound more fake on their own by repeatedly adding it wasn't a creepypasta and saying the text-to-speech voice was hot, not gonna lie. The last update was OP letting a commenter know they had found manga where a man gets dragged into a suitcase by a woman, which felt similar but wasn't it. It wouldn't be unexpected in my opinion if this was a real advertisement, but finding it I'm sure would be difficult. The reason I joined Reddit. Help me find the terrifying puppet, possibly stop motion, short of a clown that ends up himself because he is chased by the audience's laughter. This has haunted me for more than 3 decades. This short could literally come from anywhere in the world, but two strong candidates are Japan's NHK and Germany's Transtel/Deutsche Welle. This short aired in Colombia's educational TV block, 80s, 90s, which showed content from different places, but tended to show a lot of NHK/DW content. It was a puppet or stop motion short that opened with a clown ending a show to the sound of horrific laughter. It would then show him facing the mirror, trying to clean the makeup off his face while the horrible laughter continues. From here, my memory is fuzzy, but basically the clown tries to go about his daily life while the laughter chases everywhere he goes. Finally, the short ends with the clown hanging from a noose around his neck in the middle of the stage, the sound of the same horrific laughter. Please help me find this. I have searched through countless hours of puppet/stop motion shorts from all over the world to no avail. It horrified me as a child like nothing else, and I would love to see it again and face this old foe. In this post, OP recalls an animation where a clown chased by laughter ends up committing suicide. An unpleasant thing to see as a child, and it's an entry that definitely keeps getting even more interesting the longer you look into the comments. At first, we just have people stating how it reminds them of Candle Cove, or commenting for visibility because they hope it ends up being found. But then, user Stoic leaves a very useful comment. Looks like a few people have been searching for this over the years. See here and here. Unfortunately, this may be lost forever. Holy cow. All my life, I had never seen anyone else remember this. Just seeing that someone else saw it is pretty amazing. A comment on one of the pages is from a person who remembers seeing it as a child in Colombia as well. Thank you for sharing this. It seems there was a whole Facebook post too about it from some group in the UK. I refuse to believe something so horrifying could just disappear. I really hope you can find it and update us here. It sounds like an amazing little horror that I would love to see. Stoic linked a Lost Media Wiki forum where a user recalled this same freaky clown cartoon, but they have some additional details, like how he was unable to remove his makeup and had to cover his face with a scarf to hide it. DarkDubH says what causes the unstoppable laughter is when the scarf accidentally falls down while he is at a funeral. In the end, when he hangs himself, you could hear a creaking sound as the clown swung slowly on the and that they're pretty sure there wasn't any incidental music in it, which just exacerbates the creaking of the rope. The second link was to an article on Unidentified Weird TV, detailing the exact same story, the clown whose makeup wouldn't wash off. I feel like I saw this too, but I'm not Colombian or Japanese. For some reason, my brain is telling me it was in Hey Arnold, but that doesn't seem right. When asked what the visual style was similar to, OP replied saying it was somewhat realistic, like blood tea and red string, that the colors were rather drab, and was definitely not intended to look cartoonish, adding it was similar to Yuri Trinka's work. Eventually, the owner of the Unidentified Weird TV blog made their way to the Tip of My Tongue post. They let OP know they'd done some further research and had found the whole clown can't remove its makeup seems to be a recurring concept, specifically a story called Put on Your Happy Face by David Lubar. It's just a matter of tracing its origins and whether the stop-motion film was where it started or if that in turn was based on something else. It may be worth contacting the author of the former story, David Lubar, to ask where he got his inspiration from and if he's seen the film at all. The most recent comment, 2 months ago now, was from DarkDubH, OP of the Lost Media Wiki forum. It's great to see that other people remember it. Thanks for sharing your memories. There's a lot of weird obscure stuff I saw on TV during childhood that I couldn't identify for years, but have managed to identify in the last few years. This one, however, is proving to be really elusive. I'm really hopeful of it being identified now. There's not anything really I can add about my memory of it that hasn't been mentioned. The summary you've put together is very close to what I remember. I'm glad you found this post and think my summary is close to your memories. I think this is a very hard search, but hopefully we will find it eventually. I seriously hope so as well. This seems like a legitimate lost media case that deserves significantly more attention. Finding it would not only be a part of preserving media history, but would put these uneasy childhood memories to rest. Story about a grieving mother, which turns out to be a very gruesome vampire story. Okay, so first off, this story was very disturbing, so please do not read if you are sensitive to things like abortion or miscarriage. I vividly remember the opening line as, "Oh, we are the victims of our own sin," but I've tried Googling that phrase and I couldn't turn anything up, so I must not have it 100%. The reason why I remember the opening line is because it ended with the exact same line, hinting at the circular nature of the character's problem, which is part of what made it so horrifying. The story opens up with this mother who had a miscarriage. She's traumatized and can't eat and stays up in her attic painting. She blames herself for it and is burdened with guilt and believes God took her child because of some unknown sin she made. Eventually, she and her husband decide to try again. Things get weird during the pregnancy. First, she has cravings for meat, which is strange because she's a vegetarian, but not too weird because she's pregnant after all. Then she starts getting insomnia and stays awake all night and sleeps all day. She stops going out when the sun's up. Then, when she does sleep, she has really morbid dreams about killing people and death. Eventually, she comes to realize that her dreams are actually memories, and that she'd killed the people and that she's a vampire. How it works is she only got the memories and cravings back because she hadn't fed in a year, and that when these types of vampires did feed, they forgot all about it. The woman is disgusted by her realization because she is a woman of God. She doesn't want to kill people anymore, and then she realizes that not only will she have to, but that she's going to birth another vampire into the world. Then comes the shock ending. Warning, super gruesome. The woman decides to back alley abort the baby and feast on it to satisfy her craving and prevent another monster from being born. Then her memories start to fade, and it ends with her shouting the line about being the victims of her own sin. It was really impactful because you realize that the baby she'd lost in the beginning, she had also eaten, and that maybe she had already done this countless times and would maybe do it many times more. At least that's what I inferred, because I flipped back and forth to the beginning and end to confirm that yes, it was the exact same line that the story opened with. This would have been 2001-2002, as I think I was in middle school, but I could have been a freshman or sophomore. Definitely no later than 2006. Also, the story was really short, even for a short story, like 6 to 10 pages maybe. Please help. I've thought about this story so many times since I read it, and I've been looking for it again for at least 5 years. I keep trying to Google variations of the opening line, but it's either 0 results or a billion Christian sites. This story sounds wild. I hope you find it. I don't know what it is, but I'm in to join the reading group when this gets figured out. Some of the first ideas were eliminated fairly quickly, like the possibility of it being work from Anne Rice, an author who was known for her vampire stories. I own and have read all of Anne Rice's work. Unfortunately, it's not hers. Not Anne Rice. The only short story she wrote was Master of Rambling Gate. But then user Chinifer had come across an interesting finding. They ran into a review of the book Love in Vain by Poppy Z. Bright that mentioned fetus eaters. And every plausible suggestion on the thread seemed to be regarding this book. It's a collection of vampire short stories. A specific one is titled Geraldine by Ian McDowell that includes fetus eaters and was released in 2005. So OP ordered a copy on eBay hoping it'd be it. This might be it. I will read this today and confirm. OP never delivered. But this isn't a Charisse the Niece situation if you've watched volume 1 of this series. Because, based on reviews I found of Geraldine and a very descriptive summary of the plot, it definitely doesn't seem to be hit, and is probably even worse. The only thing in common is fetus eating and memory loss. Chinifer even later added how after looking into it more, it didn't sound fitting. And this user who owned a copy confirmed the book doesn't begin or end with the same line, or any quote similar to, "We are the victims of our own sin." OP made a post on r/whatsthatbook as well, where users only said the same. But I think all we have here is just yet another unsolved mystery, and it definitely does sound gruesome. A torture scene where a man gets thrown into a machine called the Pelzer Sluice and gets skinned alive. Saw this about 5 years ago, but I have no idea what network it was on. I recall that it was some sort of crime drama centered around a cartel in a warehouse/factory. The scene in question had the cartel leader signaling some colleagues to tie a man down and then interrogate him, as he found a job outside of the cartel and the leader feared that sensitive information would get leaked. After the man accidentally says something that implies he revealed his criminal background to the public, the leader says something like "chuck him in the Pelzer Sluice" and signals the other cartel workers to throw the man into this huge machine. It cuts to a first-person view as the man enters the machine, with some conveyor belts, pulleys, and buckets dumping some sort of tar-like substance all over the place. It then cuts back to the cartel leader staring off into space with his eyes wide open as the man's muffled screaming can be heard alongside heavy machinery, with this shot lasting for about 20 seconds or so. The screaming and other sounds stop as the camera shifts to what looks to be a skinless corpse exiting from one side of the machine, then it cuts to a fleshy blob of what I can only assume is a pile of skin coming from another hole of the machine. The cartel leader then picks up the skin, lifts it up to his face and sniffs it as if it were a sweater fresh out of the laundry, and says something like, the smell of a naysayer. No idea what this could have been, but I know for certain that it is not Barry, Breaking Bad, or Narcos. Any info would help. The portion of the story where OP describes the whole first-person view part is what took it from typical morbid torture scene to another level of horror, as it honestly didn't pique my interest until I read that part. I also was like, what the hell is a Pelzer Sluice? I swear I know what you're talking about. I literally can't remember it either. User The Hydra Station linked a TV Tropes page for Flaying Alive, however, said none of the ones I skimmed through on here seem to match, but you might want to check through these. This person suggested a scene from License to Kill where a henchman of the cartel falls onto a conveyor belt in a warehouse, but this wasn't it. Evil Bill Singh commented, I did a quick search for Pelzer Sluice movie. Got 37 from 2016, No Child of Mine from 1997, South Seas 1974. Just looked up more info on these and they aren't even close, sorry. I'm wondering if Pelzer Sluice is something else that OP misheard. I have auditory processing issues and sometimes think I heard one thing on a TV show or movie, but the subtitles are totally different. I definitely agree with this, as did others. Did the leader or anyone else in the film have an accent or speak another language? Pelzer Sluice seems to be close to the German or Dutch for pelt/skin slicer. Could the machine have been called something slightly different, such as Pelzsluicer? Since it's such a distinctive phrase, perhaps you could search for near variants on the name. Think he had something of a Bosnian accent to him, maybe Croatian. It's definitely likely that the name could have been something like Pelzsluicer given the content of the scene. Although given that most searches involving words like Pelz and Sluice just bring up waterways, I may have to search through lists of potential horror movies. Seditious3 pointed out how pelt means animal skin, and Aaronify wondered if he had actually said pelter since he ended up skinning the man. Pulverizer also would make sense. Now we were at least sort of onto something. Dude Brogy Hauser had the idea of the Punisher Warzone, but Mixing Memory added how the main villain is disfigured after being knocked into a bottle crusher at a recycling plant. It's not something the villain does as intentional revenge, and I believe no mention of a sluice. 2 different people thought it could be Prime Cut, someone even mentioned Kick-Ass 2. But nothing anyone said was the Pelzer Sluice scene, and the possible Pelter lead got us nowhere. I have been searching for ages and ages. I know this is not it, but the only thing I can find in media of any actual skinning machine is the peel machines in the video game Kenshi. 022 then added a second comment saying Dread has a very similar scene, but there's no phrase that could be mistaken for Pelzersluis, and the boss was clearly a woman. There were even more suggestions on what this scene could be from, but it seemed like every idea had something that just didn't match up. Nobody was ever able to find anything for OP to confirm, and this post has since remained open. The last comment was about how the dad in Gremlins, Rand Peltzer, made Peltzer products, so maybe he is actually the man behind the cartel torture. Elusive animated short of an old man cooking a big fish and getting robbed, with an unsettling conclusion. When I first saw this animated short in middle school, 2012 to 2016, it did creep me out a lot, but I never thought much of it again until some years later. I am not sure how to describe this coherently, but here are the details I remember. I watched this piece of media on HBO in Romania, though there is also a chance it may have been Cinemax. Whether or not the short was in English, I am not sure, as there wasn't really any dialogue, but the text for the credits and title must have been in some language. It was definitely foreign, as in West European or American. The art style was that one edgeless, very warmed color and smoothly moving style, similar to Netflix's Klaus. Most of the plot is fuzzy to me, but essentially this very tender old man is cooking some sort of big fish, I think. I remember thinking it looked like a whale. The fish is somewhat sentient, which is odd in itself, but we'll get there. The background is this dark kitchen, maybe by some docks at night. Cozy, but kind of uneasy in a sense. The man is chopping away at that whale-looking fish in an eerily calming silence, and eventually puts it in his oven as a lonely old man fixing some supper wood. Then the action kicks in. This buff thief-looking man enters his kitchen and tries to stab the man with a knife, or maybe it was the old man wielding the blade at one point. There is probably some struggle in a fight, I can't recall. But either way, the old man survives. There isn't a single drop of blood dripped in the short, in spite of its theme. The traumatizing thing to me at the time was how the conflict ends. In the struggle, the old man opens the big oven door, and the big fish, who is still alive and almost cutesy cartoon animal looking, swallows the thief. The fish smiles. This is the screwed up part. There is a moment of calmness in which the old man and the fish smile at each other as if the fish is glad it saved the man and the man is thankful to the fish. Then, the fish accepts its fate. The old man closes the door once again and turns up the oven, watching his aquatic savior cook away, with the crook inside. Very peaceful music or ambient perhaps, once again warm colors, and that's the end. Being a child, I felt really bad for the whale and was probably internally crying a little. I couldn't process why, in spite of being saved by it, the old man shoves it right back into the stove in this macabre, consensual manner. The short is so peaceful and mild up until that point, even taking into account the robbery part. Then that kind of shit unfolds, and it's just brushed off with some calming audio and visuals. I still get shivers whenever it crosses my mind. I am not sure this description is enough, but I really do hope it is just enough for someone to have a forgotten memory at the back of their brain resurface and tell me what they remember, if not to find the short. Then at least to know I wasn't dreaming or something. I'm new here, so I don't know if the sub occasionally serves as some sort of lost media page, but I need to see that short now, as a grown-ass man, to finally put an end to this uncertainty and terror provoked by some obscure animation college project or God knows whatever that was. Please, if you recognize this, let me know. This was my personal favorite out of the entries, so I had to save it for last. It just sounds incredibly depressing, but at the same time, it would for sure be the kind of animation I love to watch just based on how bizarre it is. It was just as alluring to other people too. You read it and you're like, holy shit, poor whale, but this better be found so I can see it. I do understand why it bothered OP as a child. This would have probably made me really sad if I had seen it as a little kid, and I would want to be hunting it down to see it again as well. Gloomy Marzipan questioned more about the video. Was this an animation meant for kids or adults? It almost sounds like a series called Animated Tales from Around the World. Do you remember what time of day you saw it? OP replied with the afternoon. I am not sure who the animation was meant for, but as it was on HBO, my guess is it could have been for teens and adults. BH Arcade didn't have an idea on the answer, but contended that it would make a great Modest Mouse video. Frosthund also didn't know, but it did make them think of this. This user asked, how old did it look? Was it more recent, maybe made in the 2000s, or older? It would also help if you could try and remember the language the title and credits were written. Late 2000s to early 2010s is my best guess. It looked pretty new to me. As for your second question below, I do not remember, like I've said. I want to say it was English, though back then I could have seen many foreign languages and said they're English since I was still not proficient in it, and I couldn't really pay attention to the credits after what I'd seen. We finally got a suggestion when user Petty Beast had the idea of HBO's short takes, saying it featured various disturbing animations, but OP stated it wasn't a possibility due to the fish video's very apparent modern animation style. Cowardly Heroine linked a YouTube video from 2006 titled Old Man Fish that they thought could be it. The only comments are, this is really weird, and hey, been 14 years, how you doing? Unfortunately, OP confirmed this was not the fish video and that he's also pretty sure it wasn't 3D. There wasn't really any good idea on what this could be, let alone if anyone had a memory whatsoever of watching it either, because it seemed like no one had a clue what OP was talking about. But then user Kurova came across something. I found something about a Croatian animated short called Lure that seems to have the art style you described in a vague similar premise. Unfortunately, I can't find the short online, but maybe the picture looks familiar. Going to the link leads you to this page on Real Shorts Film Festival of this Lure short. It was released in 2011, so it would match up with OP's time frame, and the description is, when a fisherman catches the giant fish he wished for, his problems begin. Very descriptive. But just as you might expect, two others in the thread were able to find the short and report back, with the disappointing finding that it didn't correspond with OP's post in any shape or form. A positive was we did get another detail from OP that he thought the old man in the elusive fish short looked like a bald version of Eustace Bagg from Courage the Cowardly Dog. One of the last few comments was made by user Land Fury, the only person in the thread to recall. I think I vaguely remember the same thing. It appeared in this app on my Nintendo 3DS that sometimes imported videos to show. The art style was the same, and I'm pretty sure it had a fish and the vibe matches. I can't remember the name at all, but maybe this will help someone remember. Unluckily, I don't think it did help, because it's been about 2 years since the last comment, and the elusive fish short was never found. But I sincerely hope one day it can be, and that OP can finally end his uncertainty. Anyone remember/heard of this scary website? I can't really remember the name of it or all of its content, but it was this really spooky website that a friend at my school told me to visit. This was around 2008 to 2009, I think. It was a dark website with a video on it. The video was in a similar fashion to the tape from The Ring. I'm almost sure there was a person in the video who, himself in the head. I think the video was about someone who went down the sewer slide. It might have been a true story, but probably not. There was a small picture of a face next to the video player, and once the video ended, a message appeared which I think said something about a phone call. When the message appeared, the website froze and the face started to move, and I remember freaking the F out when this happened. I'm getting Candle Cove vibes from this memory because I don't know a single person who ever heard of it, but I'm 100% sure it existed. I have no contact with this friend anymore, which is why I haven't asked her about it. Thought maybe someone here knows about it. If it still exists, I would like to explore it again. I never entered that website again because it scared me pretty badly. I was like 12 at the time. Would be fun to get some context what it was all about. OP had cross-posted to r/horror, which also didn't have the answer, but a user over there asked if it could be the grifter. The creepypasta urban legend originating from 4chan that says it's a soul-rending experience, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it's not. But OP replied to that comment, adding some additional details, like the contents of the site were in black and white. Once the face moved, it would start smiling. Then the site would turn into static noise lag, and the only way to close it out was with Alt F4. I'm not 100% sure about the phone call, but I do have a strong memory of being afraid that my phone would get a call. I might have been relating this to The Ring, which I had already seen at the time. The thing I'm 10,000% sure about, though, is that freaking face and the website freezing once you had finished the clip. This post had a whopping total of 10 comments, one being from the notifier bot and another being OP's required comment for a Tip of My Tongue post to be approved. The first suggestion was from Sonic Hedgehog 1991 with "huge shot in the dark," but the part about the moving face reminds me of the most recent Local 58 video. Not the one. I doubt anyone knows about this. Feels really strange because I'm 100% sure it's a real site that existed once. At the time, it was literally one of the scarier things I had seen. Best of luck to you, man. Saving this because I'm really curious about what you found. Hugo the Nerd asked if it was Lomando.com, an online horror puzzle video game that features screamers and gore with the goal being to get through all of them. I actually didn't know about it until this post, but it seems like a fictional animated version of Run the Gauntlet that's first disguised as being cute. While an interesting site, it unfortunately was not what OP was looking for. The third and final suggestion was TechZoned, a website with flash games and animations, most notably known for the insanity test and a Where's Waldo screamer. The site had various other jumpscare animations, so it could have been what hosted the video OP was referring to. But the series is labeled Unsolved for a reason, and the website has yet to be found. Creepy animated movie that I saw when I was younger. I remember randomly watching this movie because it was being broadcast on the Danish kids channel called DR Remasheng. It must have been around 2012 to 2014. I don't remember the movie in its entirety, but I'll try to go through it as good as I can. I remember the movie being computer animated, but I don't think that it was a very high quality computer animation. The movie starts out with our main character being a young girl who loves and looks up to her parents. I remember the girl sitting at a vanity with her mother, admiring how beautiful she thinks that her mother is. It goes on like that for a bit, with her loving and admiring her parents. But as our main character gets older, she starts to think less and less of her parents. Now she finds them embarrassing and annoying. She even starts to find them ugly and gross. Later in the movie, she gets a boyfriend, which is a huge relief for her because she finally can be around someone her own age. At some point, her boyfriend gets a facial piercing, which inspires the main character to get one for herself. Her parents are, however, not happy with this, and this is when the movie starts to get really weird. Her father starts talking about how she can get her piercings for free if she lets him pierce her face. He then goes on to demonstrate how he will do so by laying the mother down on the dinner table, then taking a hand drill and drilling screws into the mother's face. After that, both of the parents start to chase the main character and her boyfriend around the house. Trying to escape from them, the main character and her boyfriend climb up the chimney of her house, but an explosion goes off in the background, and the movie hits a sort of reset. We then see similar scenarios where the main character and her boyfriend tries to escape her crazy parents, right up to the point where they're once again climbing the chimney. The main character then comes to the conclusion that if she wants to escape her parents, she'll have to kill them. She then breaks the fourth wall and looks directly at the viewer, and then says something along the lines of, "Don't worry, it's just a cartoon." I remember being really freaked out by this part. I don't really remember much of the movie after that, but I do remember seeing the end credits roll. I don't really remember what the characters looked like, but I'm pretty sure that the mother wore a long green dress with pink dots. I also can't exactly say where the movie was from, but the version I saw was dubbed in Danish. I am pretty sure that the movie comes from a Western country, either that or it's East European. I really hope that someone can help me find this movie because I've been searching for it for years now. I remember that the channel would broadcast lesser-known animated movies. I, for example, do remember seeing the movie Anna and the Moods on the channel, which is a somewhat similar movie, but it's definitely not the one that I'm looking for. Here's a bad illustration of what I remember the mother looking like. I wanted to put this entry last as an homage to volume 1 of this series because it gives major Charisse Denise vibes, and I had happened to put that post last in volume 1. Link in the description, by the way, for a playlist of this series, but okay, let's get onto the rest of the entry. Jeepers, what a disturbing animation. I mean, keep in mind OP watched it when they were a child. It's entirely possible the actual film is far more lighthearted and goofier than what OP remembers. Lightheartedly inserting screws into mommy's face. How goofy. Maybe she wasn't inserting screws into her face, maybe she was piercing her mom and OP thought it was something more sinister. Spadoogs, the OP, replied to this comment with, "This scene really stuck with me, so I'm pretty sure that the father hammered or screwed nails into the mother's face. However, keep in mind that cartoon violence and real-life violence are two very different things. I'm sure that Tom and Jerry would sound super messed up if you described it to someone who's never seen it before. This scene in particular just really disturbed me." Commenting because I want the answer. What a trip reading this post was. I can't understand why this was for kids. But this user asked if OP was sure it definitely was aimed at children or if it could have been an adult animation disguised as such. I'm only assuming that it was a children's movie because it was broadcast on a children's channel. But it definitely wouldn't be the first time that someone had mistaken adult animation for kids animation. Mana the Mana commented, "I see in your other post you notice a logo but can't remember it exactly. Can you remember it roughly or any elements of it at all?" The way I remember it, it was a simplified old TV, but at this point I can't be sure. I could try to illustrate it, but I also don't want to put fake images into people's heads. But this user insisted any sketch would be helpful since there could be similarities that make it easy to identify, so Spadoogs created a few renditions of the logo from their memory. So the logo looks a lot like the Studio B Productions logo, but after doing a lot of investigation, it doesn't appear that they worked on any 3D animations, at least not that I can find. Does this look similar to what you remember anyway, or am I way off? It definitely looks similar to what I had in mind, but at this point I don't even know how reliable my memory is. Thanks a bunch though, I really appreciate the interest. Mana the Mana's last question to help the search was if OP could provide any examples to art or cartoons that were stylistically similar to the film. Besides my own masterpiece, then here's some screenshots that I found from other movies that I feel have the same visual vibe. As the thread went on, it seemed like there was no proof of this mysterious film's existence, not even a recommendation on what the movie itself might be. Someone from OP's first post about it even said, "That sounds like a dream. I'm not saying it was one, but that it sounds like one." But then this user showed up, whose entire profile was dedicated to finding the same thing. I literally just posted about this today and a lovely Redditor guided me here. I definitely got a bunch of facts wrong, but here's my post in case there's anything you/others can use. I think the only extra things I got is a description of the girl, white, blonde, skinny teen, and I'm quite sure it was from an earlier year, roughly 2007 to 2009. Really hoping we can find it. Now, their sister did remember it as a show, but OP pointed out how the fact that the movie would do a reset every time she felt it getting rid of her parents could cause them to misremember it as a series. OP also asked if the user was from Denmark. As soon as I read your post, I just knew it was what we looked for, even down to your drawing of the mom character. It just unlocked something in my brain. And yes, I'm from Denmark. Part of me feels like it might be Danish, but my sister is pretty sure it was dubbed, so maybe Scandinavian? Or just anything that wasn't originally English. Would make so much sense as to why it's impossible to find and no one really knows it because it would be pretty niche. It's really annoying me that I remember the logo you drew so well, but I have no clue which channel it was. I keep thinking it's Cartoon Network, but they never had that logo, and I've been checking both Danish and international channels like Boomerang, Ramajan, Nickelodeon, Sun Studio, Toonami, TV2, Jetix, anything I could dig up, and I can't find it. I might be missing channels, but I can't think of or find any more that I know I watched. I think it might be some obscure sub-channel or something. OP replied saying their memory of the logo was for the production company, not the logo for the channel, and that they saw the logo when the credits were rolling. Oh yeah, that would make a lot of sense. I clearly remember the logo, so I think you're very close to the actual design. I'll try looking into production companies instead. That was the last comment on the post 89 days ago, and this unsettling children's film has yet to be found, but I sure hope it can be.
Do you ever feel like you're too small or too young to really witness and win somebody to the Lord?
Really, Jesus loves us in a very special way. He keeps us safe. We'll always stay with our shepherd.
Everybody can be happy.
Isn't Jesus wonderful? He can heal anything, even warts.
You know we have all sorts of surprises here in Treasure Attic.
Creepy religious kids show made by a cult I escaped from. I know the title sounds clickbaity, but I assure you every word of it is true and what I'm describing is real. I just know it is. Some background. The cult in question is called the Family International, or TFI. I grew up in Huntington Beach, which funnily enough is where the culture started. I was born into it with my parents still remaining members to this day, their start dates for the cult as of now being unknown. What I know for a fact. The show followed a sheep, possibly named something biblical, as they encountered problems. The show was in the style of Sesame Street, with puppets and actors with small animated segments. Standard kids show affairs, right? Well, the problems encountered dove into disturbing subject matter. One segment I recall had the sheep talking to a little boy, who had said he wanted to serve Jesus in all the ways he could, with the sheep saying the little boy should give his body to the church, with an animated Jesus standing next to what I recall being children wearing little clothing. The show, from what I remember, appeared to have been made in the 80s, judging by the camera quality, but I grew up in the 90s and saw these at only 4 years old, so that puts us at 1994 for my earliest recollection of it. Some of the kids within our group were born in the 80s and they had seen these too, so that puts a possible start date as late as 1985 to 1989, but I could be wrong. The show came on VHS and we had hundreds stored away on church property. If this proves the existence of hundreds of episodes or just means there are multiple copies of the same episode is unknown. My theories. Information is likely scarce for two reasons. Either it's been scrubbed to save reputation, or it was produced by the cult with no release outside it, so obviously no documentation. I also believe that the actress who voiced Sheep was a gospel singer who sang in numerous videos for the cult dating back to the 70s, which also leads me to believe it may have had musical segments. Children within the cult may have also been used for the production as well. I intend to update as new information is found, and I thank anyone who takes the time to read and help the search. As OP briefly went over, the Family International is a still active religious cult that was founded in 1968. They've undergone several name changes over the years, presumably in an attempt to cover their horrific past. One name being the Children of God, which is the cult that River and Joaquin Phoenix were a part of as children due to their parents' involvement. It's a very disturbing rabbit hole, and truth be told, the show may be better off lost. However, I'm sure the reason no one has been able to find it is a mix of obscurity and the cult trying to hide their disgusting history. I think it brings awareness of said history because such things shouldn't be hidden. Let's get into the comments and suggestions. Treasure Attic, probably the most infamous TFI show, was brought up repeatedly. Especially this episode, Let's Have Fun, where a sheep is featured and has a similar unsettling undertone, like OP's description. But while close, this was not the show they were looking for. Another that was suggested a few times was Kitty Vitty, but this wasn't it either. I noticed several of these literal cult indoctrination videos are marked as for kids on YouTube, which is really concerning and goes to show YouTube is worried about the wrong things. I was demonetized for talking about a cartoon clown going down the sewer slide in the second volume of this series, but child exploitative cult shows definitely belong on YouTube Kids. This user asked if it was the Lovettes and linked a terrifying theme song with some uncanny looking ass puppets. But OP said the style of puppets didn't match up and just overall looked very different. Someone brought up the cult's bizarre music video for a song called SOS that I guess became a meme, and while obviously it wasn't the kids show, someone brought up how this was produced by Aurora Productions, which could be a lead. User The Real Eggplant commented, "Was it this? The guy in this video was busted years later in online chats talking about kidnapping, killing, and eating children," referring to this clip of the show Joy Junction, where the puppeteer talks about dirty pictures, and who would have thought, eventually this dude ended up being sentenced to 20 years in prison. Honeydew Flavored linked this, titled "Frightening Christian Puppet Show," where sheep sing about their shepherd Jesus, but it doesn't match up too much and only gives Pink Morning cartoon vibes. I don't think it's actually anything sinister. But with all of these ideas and suggestions, and none of them putting the mystery to rest, user Slevlife raised a very valid point, saying there were only so many series that TFI made, none matching up with OP's recollection, adding that their guess was it was a children's show from another Christian group that was in the spirit enough to let them watch it. However, this user commented, TFI scrubbed all the child abuse shit pretty thoroughly after the Ricky incident if I recall correctly, but good luck finding it. There seems to be a lot of confusion on where and under what circumstances the man behind the puppet show propaganda died. The Ricky incident that they are referring to is a member who was essentially born and raised into this cult, being abused his whole life. Eventually escaped the cult in 2001, but he still understandably struggled moving on with his life. 4 years later, on January 7th, 2005, he recorded a video saying he needed to take retribution for the abuse in the family. The next day, he killed a member of the cult following himself. It's such a tragic situation and highlights just how messed up the cult is. I really can't believe it's still a thing. And Feline Nova said a girl they used to be friends with had grown up in the cult and that when her family left, her parents stole some of the quote brainwashing videos. She then went on to upload them to YouTube, proving there's probably a lot more media from TFI out there than we realize. This user, if their memory is recalling correctly, is the only person in the thread who remembers the video. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I have no idea what it's called. At least I think it's the same thing. I was at a hotel with my wife once, and this was on one of the TV channels. We were in Traverse City, Michigan though, which isn't anywhere remotely close to Huntington Beach. We saw it around 2008, if that helps. All I remember was a song that went, "I'm sorry God and my sins make me sad. Please forgive me and make me glad. I'm sorry God with the cross you show me, that my sins made you die for me." This also had subtitles for the song, and "die" was in all capitals. It was super creepy, and we refer to it as the Penitent Puppet Pals, but that's just the name we made up. We've never been able to find what it really was. Memory is pretty fickle though, so I'd take this with a grain of salt. Honestly, the only reason why I could justify this resurfacing is to give OP some sort of peace of mind, and to raise awareness of the immorality and sickness of the cult, but regardless, I wish OP the best. 1980s/90s. Need help identifying a short snippet of some rock song. User Tethered97 turned to the Tip of My Tongue subreddit on May 25th, 2022, in hopes they'd be able to figure out the artist of the song. They said, "Here's the only snippet of the song that I have, and a link to a Vocaroo clip that you can take a listen to now."
Long and silken gown that fits her body, it makes me want to ask for more. And I take her to a theater show and bring her back to my place for a while. And it makes me feel so good inside to know that she is so in love with me. And I know if I were to ask her now to come, she would run away with me. And it makes me feel so good inside to know that she's so in love.
Immediately, my first thought was that it sounded like Morrissey from the Smiths, and a lot of other people shared that sentiment, but this obviously isn't actually a Smiths song. OP had obtained the audio from a now deleted YouTube video that they said had nothing to do with the song and was an unrelated still photo while the music played in the background. They did have the link, but it wasn't archived on way back. OP said the channel that posted the video is an asshat who was harassing the community they were a part of and is confident that the channel would not help in finding an answer anyway. Suggestions and opinions on the genre, era, and style of singing varied drastically within the thread. Peppermint S commented, "Musically it reminds me of 5440, but the voice isn't quite right. How certain are you about it being an 80s or 90s song?" To which OP replied, "I'm not exactly certain about that, it's just that from where I got it from, that makes me think as such. I could be wrong, but I guess that can only be answered when someone finds this darn thing." Replies on the opinion of the era and genre included all of the following. "I'd go back to the 60s or 70s. I'd say mid to late 70s given the synth harmony. That was right around the time they were coming into vogue. Disagree. The production is very British, around the mid 80s. I think it sounds like a Britpop/rock group from the 90s. That definitely isn't any 90s song I've ever heard. There is too much synth in the background, which would put it closer to early to mid 80s. But the instruments and singer seem closer to a 60s or 70s band. It sounds like a 90s Canadian alt-rock band. Accordions, along with the style, were common at one point in the 90s. That's such a mid-80s sound. Definitely some Smiths influence with a bit of postcard records. The accent sounds northern, but not clearly Manchester or Liverpool. I would be surprised if it was earlier than 83. It's so catchy." Users mentioned the song sounding like it could be James Taylor, John Denver, The Church, R.E.M., Kitchens of Distinction, Miracle Legion, along with handfuls of other artists. But like this user said, it's most likely not any popular band since the lyrics can't be found online. The lyrics not being online doesn't mean it's an insanely obscure band, it just probably isn't any of the ones previously mentioned. I lean towards mid to late 80s to early 90s, purely for the fact that I've ran into comparable music while on my blue chin hunts. PM me a good song thought it sounded like the neo-psych revival of the 80s, giving Rain Parade and the 3 O'Clock vibes, but that there were hundreds of indie bands releasing singles and EPs at that time, so it could be hard to pinpoint the actual artist. They wished OP good luck on their search and said, "Worst case scenario, you don't find this song, but you find a ton new favorite bands if you like that particular style of music." There's yet to be a considerable lead, but I still think if gained enough traction, this song can be identified. A weird/creepy ad I saw on Hulu and Twitch that didn't seem to actually advertise anything. On April 18th, 2023, user Operation Green Beans inquired about an unsettling advertisement that they saw on both Twitch and Hulu between the start of the pandemic lockdown and March 2021, given that they had gotten the ad-free version of Hulu after that. The details of the post are as follows. It was a 45-second ad, started out with TV static, then flipped to what appeared to be a male standing in an open grass field facing away from the camera with no sound. It went back to static into a weird rundown hospital. I'm assuming because there were old wheelchairs and mobile hospital beds. Again, no sound. Then it went back to the static a bit before, showing a woman in old-time clothes, think like they wear on old western shows. The woman was not facing the camera and was slowly backing up toward it. She started to turn around when it went back to static and the words "Don't be scared" appeared on a black background to white text. Then there was a noise I can best describe as a pen click and it went back to TV static. The only sounds in the ad were the TV static sounds and the thing I could only call a pen click. I saw the ad quite a few times on Hulu, but only like twice on Twitch. Google hasn't helped me at all. If there's a better place for this beyond here where I could get an answer, let me know, but this was the only place I could think of. User Drowning in Flames said how the clicking noise and static screen reminded them of The Ring, so had the idea it could have been an ad for one of the sequels. But OP insisted this wasn't the case, saying it wasn't some creepy bitch who crawls out of a TV in Wells. Then later added their brain was scarred by The Ring when they saw it during its release, implying they would have recognized it as an advert for the film franchise. Aniana asked if the font matched the ads for the game Don't Be Afraid, since they splashed the title on screen, but unfortunately OP said it didn't and described the text as blocky. User Don't Kill Hobos suggested ads for American Horror Stories, but OP replied with, "I've basically ruled out AHS." And their latest edits say it doesn't seem to be anything to do with American Horror Story, and I have ruled out it being any Huluween ads. None of them fit. It seemed like there was no promising suggestion or lead, but then this user came across an old thread titled, "Okay Twitch, you can stop with the creepy ads that aren't advertising anything." This was in 2018, but some details match up with OP's post, and we all know how memory can be funky. Or maybe they were simply still advertising them again in 2020. These are the ads they recalled seeing. 1. A girl standing in the middle of an open field, walking slowly toward the camera as the camera person backs up. 2. A birthday cake collapsing on itself. 3. A car following a truck on what seems to be a highway. A mattress falls out of the truck and the car swerves off the road and the camera stares at the mattress. 4. A person walking slowly into a lake. 5. A wheelchair in an empty room. This is the one with sound, and it is of a baby crying. In typical Reddit fashion, this OP got accused of carbon monoxide poisoning, but their CO levels were a-okay, and people later found another thread talking about what appeared to be the same phenomenon of puzzling ads, saying, "For the past few weeks, I've been getting really weird ads at late night. Most of the time, I don't even think they're advertising anything," and going on to describe some. They added an edit. "Literally seconds after posting this, I got a weird ad. It's some guy singing and lighting a candle. No products, no text, just a guy singing and lighting the candle. It ends abruptly mid-song." And this time they provided a screenshot. So users in the Tip of My Tongue thread were able to fetch the original video of this candle advert. But no one has yet been able to find the creepy field video that OP is looking for. It's only been about a month though, and whether it's a part of this string of unsettling Twitch ads or not, I can't imagine something from only a few years ago would stay lost. So I'm hopeful that this post will be marked as solved at some point in the future. Disturbing/upsetting YouTube channel from I'm guessing around 2010 to 2013. Quick disclaimer, there's a brief mention of child SA and a couple of things that some people probably don't want to hear about. I don't think it's that disclaimer worthy until the last animation they describe, but I'll put timestamps and I have to censor some stuff anyway, so let's just get into the post. I remember this YouTube channel that posted strange, crude animations of disturbing things. I only remember a few as these really upset me and I was around the ages of 10 to 12 at the time. First one is an animation. I remember it being black and white, but there could have been minimal color. Of a young girl with a very deformed and ugly baby wrapped in a blanket. She was on a public street using a payphone and talking to some kind of 911 operator, or crisis type hotline. The conversation was something like, "Hello, I ran away from home with my baby, I need help." To which 911 responded, "Okay, we can help you, where are you?" But the girl replied with, "There's something wrong with my baby, it doesn't look right. The thing is, it's also my dad's baby." 911 said something like, "Okay, I understand, we can get you help." The second video was another crude animation of a young girl who had woken up and gotten her first period. I don't remember many details from this one, but it was something like she didn't know what was happening and thought something was really wrong with her, so she got scared and ran into traffic, then got hit by a car and died. One I sort of remember was either a young child, don't remember if it was a boy or girl, taking a weapon to school and weaponizing kids and teachers. Later it shows them coming home and being beaten by a man, maybe father or stepfather, then a silhouette of them being by the man on the ground. That's all I remember. It was really weird, disturbing, and upsetting, and I don't think I watched many other videos on the channel. Or if I did, I blocked them out. I want to say the name of the channel started with a K and had a P in the name somewhere. The animation style was not very colorful, pretty crude and simple as I remember. Kind of similar to the style of Cyanide and Happiness, but not exactly that. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, I'd appreciate your input. Thank you. As someone who grew up on the weird, sometimes disturbing side of YouTube, these videos ring a bell. I don't know if I'm recalling the videos because tons of similar edgy, gross content were being produced at the time, or if I had come across this specific channel. But other users also felt they had seen some of them. User Random Cacti commented, "I definitely remember watching these videos. I'm guessing they aren't up on YouTube anymore." Due to the nature of topics mentioned, being removed or the creator deleting them is definitely likely, but I think there's a chance it still somehow is on YouTube or someone out there has it archived. We know it isn't from Danger Dolan or this animation titled Amy. This user asked if it was a Treats for Beast video, but it didn't match up. Someone had the audacity to say salad fingers, but as Happy Investment pointed out, salad fingers is wholesome. Eating a Cookie had the idea for OP to go through their watch history if they use the same account as they did back then, saying you can sort by date to make it a lot more of a convenient task. But OP replied, "This would be great. Unfortunately, I just browsed without an account back then." This user said they think the best way to figure out the mystery of this disturbing channel could be browsing 2010 to 2013 YouTube on the Wayback Machine. I'm inclined to agree. I'd be really surprised if none of the videos are archived anywhere, and this is one that I think is just a matter of time before it shows up. Psychological horror / thriller where the big reveal is that they're in a large structure in the desert. My fiance and I were talking about foreshadowing and how I hate movies that make a big plot point with no foreshadowing. One of my gripes was, like in Cube, how at the end the guy goes to exit, but it turns out the cube is in the desert, but there was no foreshadowing, and it was just random. He looked at me weird and said, "That's not how Cube ends." I was adamant it was. I have seen Cube. I love the Saw series, so friends made me watch Cube in about the early 2010s. So he sat me down and made me watch the end of Cube again. I have no recollection of the end he showed me, or the character that survives at the end of the film, even though he is the MC or anything about it. But I know I've seen it because I know stuff like how the set was just 2 rooms with different lighting. Also, you know it's in a cave, not the desert. So now I have this scene in my head, maybe in the Saw-esque genre, maybe not, of a movie about people escaping rooms / puzzles in a giant structure, but at the end a character escapes, but they're in a vast desert. I think it was a large mirrored cube-esque structure, and the film had no foreshadowing it was in a desert, so their escape was actually just not worth it because now they die in a desert. I genuinely feel like I'm going bonkers. Did I just make up a film and assign the storyline to Cube? I'm not an artist in any way, but here's some visuals that are like kinda in the ballpark of what I remember. In their points they added, "I know memory is fallible, and I don't have carbon monoxide poisoning." With this entry, we're going to be sort of dipping into the Mandela effect and how fallible memory really is. Now, I was obsessed with the Mandela effect back in 2016 and thought I was in some kind of parallel reality. Now, I think memory is unreliable and people would rather blame it on CERN or whatever than admit we can't trust our own brains. But that doesn't mean the movie that OP is recalling doesn't exist, it's just there's a chance they did make it up. Going into the comments though, you'll see multiple people also thought Cube ended like this. Catwoman1948 commented, "I must be crazy because that is how I remember the ending of Cube too. Never saw the sequels, would never watch Saw or anything that extreme. It had to be Cube. A cave, no. I'm certain I remember desert at the end. Now I'm going to have to watch it again." Yo, you two get back to your own timeline. This user said, "Dude, I literally came here to say Cube, so if Cube doesn't end that way, I gotta know the answer to this too." Okay, I'm going to throw gasoline on this Mandela effect fire and agree with you OP 100%. I was certain this was the Cube. That was the first thing that popped into my mind, and I remember the exact ending you described beat for beat. How is this not the Cube? It must be something so similar that our minds are mixing the two movies, but I can't figure out what it was. There were some actual feasible suggestions, like the Maze Runner, Circle, the Portal 2 ending, I Have No Mouth That I Must Scream, Signal, a tons more, but none were it. OP even added a humongous list of everything it isn't. At this point I was like, alright, probably a false memory. Let's be real, the ending to Cube isn't the most memorable. But then user Sarcasm left a comment that caught my eye. Maybe you saw the alternate ending, and linked to a Lost Media Wiki article. In it contains info of the original ending for Cube, where Kazan is still the one who makes it out, but as he walks out, it's revealed that what's outside of the cube is a beach, which can look a lot like a desert in some iffy memory. The only thing is it also has to do with aliens, which OP said didn't seem familiar, but reiterated how unreliable memories are. The director decided he wanted the outside of the cube to remain a mystery, which is why we have the ending that we do today. But several people have claimed to have seen this ending during its theatrical release. There's just no known copy of it. Someone in this thread actually said they saw both versions. There is a hole in this theory though. OP was 5 years old during Cube's theater run, so they didn't see it in theaters. But OP did say this: "There were 2 ways I could have possibly seen it at this point in my life. A person in my life at the time was a movie savant. Genuinely. He had shelves of DVDs even though it was around 2010. Definitely a definite, very legal way that is legal, which both could have ended up having that ending. Dude was obsessed with hoarding rare stuff in media in case it went out of print or was lost forever. But because it's unconfirmed and I can't find it, I can't give it the stamp of approval. The only possibilities are it's an obscure movie that hasn't been named, OP's pirate friend had a copy of the lost ending, or this doesn't exist and is just a collective false memory. It is funny how these widespread false memories tend to have little pieces of truth in them, like the alternate cube ending, or how Fruit of the Loom trademark filed a cornucopia in the 80s, only to never use a cornucopia in their logo. Maybe the movie that OP watched will be found, or maybe it never existed. Unfortunately, this post is one that I fear might stay open forever, but you never know. Weird Nick Jr. / Noggin CGI animated short on top of spaghetti. Do you have vague, nearly unexplainable memories of strange media you saw as a child that tend to leave you with this slightly unsettling feeling? OP turned to Reddit to hunt down one of their hazy childhood memories. The post read, "Hello. I was recently reminded of a very obscure animated short that I remember seeing on TV as a kid in the early 2000s. Unfortunately, I don't even remember what channel it was on, but it was definitely one of the ones that was targeted for very young children, around 2000 to 2003 at the latest. The short was created in crude CGI and was a rendition of the On Top of Spaghetti song for kids, and it featured a pretty creepy bowl of 90s CGI spaghetti and meatballs that were dancing around a table in a weird dark room, which had black and white checkered tile floor. I remember seeing it as a bump in between cartoons, and I cannot remember much outside of being creeped out by it when I was young. It made me feel very isolated. I've never had luck searching for it before and thought I'd try here. Does anybody remember this?" Now, I remember the Sesame Street episode with Snuffleupagus' rendition of On Top of Spaghetti. That already is a bit odd, mainly because Snuffleupagus himself could be considered a bit funky looking, and the meatball transforms into a tree. Sesame Street is full of weird shit, but that's besides the point. Thankfully, multiple people within the thread recalled this unnerving bumper, some giving us hints as to the channel it was likely to be aired on along with the time period and other details. OP was 25 at the time of making this post, but the majority of those that saw the spaghetti short were in their mid-30s to early 40s, indicating it likely wasn't a rare thing unique to the time that OP was a child. Buddy Fluff had such a clear memory of it, and is certain it was Nickelodeon, not Nick Jr., since they would have been too old to be watching Nick Jr. at the time they remember it from. This user added they watched it around the time of Ren and Stimpy, Doug, and such shows. OP was glad others remembered it, saying, "No clue why after all these years I still think about it. Just something about it really stuck with me. Like I said, it gave me a very creepy feeling." Drop of Poison 86 replied to the original comment with, "I'm also mid-30s and I second this. I feel like it was claymation style." A bunch of others would then recall claymation as well. It's unclear whose memories are mistaken, especially considering they were all children at the time of seeing it, with the exception of this user, Skeleton Meat, whose son watched it growing up, adding their son was now 18. This post was from a year ago though, so he'd be 19 at the time of this video, meaning the strange bumper would have still been airing even in the mid-2000s. One of the users that thinks it was a claymation grew up without cable, so guessed it was something on PBS, but said if it was Nickelodeon, that could still make sense, since they'd watched Nick at friends' houses. However, OP did watch a lot of PBS and believes there's a chance of the On Top of Spaghetti short being aired on the channel. This user asked if the art style was similar to Ambi and Dexter, but OP said it was different and doubled down on the very early computer animation. There was a black void around a table with a bowl of spaghetti. The song sounded like a children's choir singing it. The floor was checkered black and white. The noodles and meatballs floated around the song, and I remember the meatball falling off the table and rolling away. It wasn't very colorful. The best way I could describe it is imagine a pitch black room, but in the middle is a table with the spaghetti, with a small light bulb above only illuminating the table and floor. There wasn't any background art or anything like that. Very creepy stuff. The only thing I know 100% is the On Top of Spaghetti song plays throughout the video. You may be thinking all this thread so far is people's recollections with nothing that legitimately could help a search. But there is a lead I'd consider decently substantial, and that is the Children's Songs compilation Commercial Theory. Someone who remembered it had a feeling it was featured in the preview section of a VHS or DVD that they owned. Brundlefly Urinal Cake thought it was specifically a commercial for a compilation of children's songs sold on VHS or DVD. I find this completely believable because some of those music videos on children's songs compilations are incredibly odd. I had one called Baby Songs by Hap Palmer, and more of them were a little creepy than the ones that weren't. This was originally released in the 80s, then re-released in the 2000s, so if a similar thing, it'd make total sense that the age range of those that recall it is so vast. If it indeed did air or exist in general over the span of nearly 2 decades, how could it be that hard to find? I have a feeling this one will turn up, but you never know how difficult a piece of media can prove itself to be found. But I hope On Top of Spaghetti will show itself at last. Need help. I have a strange memory of a TV show no one has been able to solve. OP starts their post stating they've carried this memory throughout the majority of their life. It left a serious impression on them when they saw it as a child and recall watching it with their late grandmother. The scene that stuck in their brain took place in a kitchen, with a green and black tiled floor with colorful walls. Second tiled floor traumatizing childhood memory. OP says a fat kid and his mother are occupying this kitchen. The mom tells the child she is going out and instructs him not to eat the squirty/whipped cream that's in the fridge when he's home alone because he's too fat. The mother leaves and the boy disobeys her. He goes to the fridge and sprays the whole can of whipped cream into his mouth. This results in a huge mess, and the boy consumes so much whipped cream that he dramatically vomits all over the floor as dramatic music plays. The child collapses onto the floor and goes into a coma-like state, possibly dead. As the camera zooms out in a bird's eye view of the boy passed out on the kitchen floor, tragic music plays. A voiceover then states a phrase along the lines of, "Kids, this is why you should always listen to your mother," and it comes to an end. OP adds they've endlessly searched but haven't even been able to find a shred of its existence. They detail that there is a movie called Thunderpants where the character in the movie looks and is dressed similar to the whipped cream kid, but obviously isn't it. There is also an 80s movie called The Stuff where OP says similar horrific things happen with cream, but that it's ultimately nothing like their memory, so not it either. Is this a Mandela effect memory of a movie that no longer exists? Or could my mind be making up a false memory from other movies I watched as a kid? It's very doubtful that this is entirely a false memory, as OP went to a more drastic length than I've ever seen on the sub and was able to animate the entire scene they remember. The original was live action, which somehow makes it even weirder, but OP's rendition is without a doubt worth showing.
Heading out in a minute, but you have to promise me not to eat squirty cream because you're too fat and it will make you ill and make you sick. So have fun, but I'm going out now. Bye bye. Oh, Mummy said I should eat squirty cream. It's my favourite. I should probably listen to her. Who cares? I'm going to have some anyway. She won't know. kids. That's why you should always listen to your mother and do what she says. Look what happened to this poor boy. He didn't listen to his mother, and he got sick and made him ill. So always listen to your mother and do not eat too much squirty cream. The end.
Despite the dire efforts of the animation, no one was able to identify it. Ideas included the cake scene from Matilda, Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids, the Monty Python skit in The Meaning of Life, along with plenty of others, but none were the answer. User Register Afraid figured how unlikely it was to be a full-fledged film, stating this had to have been some obscure low-budget show. They suggested going through the CITV and BBC One after-school program archives since OP is from the UK. What I think is most plausible and was brought up by several others is that this was a PSA, albeit a twisted one as this user said, but it would make the most sense. PSAs have historically been peculiar anyway, so it wouldn't be surprising. There were a couple food-related PSAs and commercials shared within the thread, but none were the infamous fat kid cream scene. 2 users did have their own recollection of witnessing it, so it's assumed this is in fact a real thing that is out there, not some false memory. However, it hasn't been found, and if it truly is some obscure low-budget show or a PSA that aired merely once or twice, there's an unfortunate chance it may never be found. But a user with a vague memory of this strange clip has a glimmer of optimism, telling OP they think this isn't just a figment of their imagination, and that they hope they end up solving their mystery. I can only hope the same. When a character dies in the show, the opening replaces where the character once was with emptiness. Memories tend to become exceedingly jumbled up as time goes by. You can mix dreams with reality, and Vine saw streams with video games. In this entry, Paradox Nutella either watched an extremely obscure show, or they are suffering from the evil farming game effect. Only time will tell as to which. The content of their post reads as follows. It was most likely animated, but I'm not 100% certain on that. I don't know the time period, I can't even remember anything about the show. It definitely came after the 90s, more likely 2000s or even later. Perhaps I saw it in a wild fever dream because no matter what I search, I can't find it. I think the opening consisted of like a showcase of each character doing something with their name and music in the background. I remember one of the characters died, and instead of the opening playing the usual animation, it was just empty with the music still playing. By empty, I don't mean a black screen. It was just the background but no person. For example, if the character was playing basketball / shooting hoops on a court by himself, the new clip would have been an empty basketball court. I remember watching it and getting an eerie feeling. OP wasn't alone in the recollection of the eerie opening of this elusive show. It's always nice when you're reassured that you didn't just accidentally fabricate some piece of media out of thin air. The more I'm reading over this, I'm so damn sure I've seen this before too. A Catermelon assured its existence, but was also stumped regarding the actual title. This user then replied that their sister insisted she's seen it with her description matching OP's. Oberon139 swore they saw it as well, saying they were surprised when people started dying. OP replied, I feel like the first character death was pretty shocking because it happened to the super wholesome / funny character. I skipped the ending to watch the next episode, then the opening was playing and she wasn't there. I remember thinking, what the hell? They've confirmed it wasn't a misremembering of Doki Doki Literature Club, Erased, School Live, Angel Beats, along with a gargantuan amount of other theories. Someone said, bitch, that's America's Next Top Model, but it wasn't that either. Despite this post remaining open after 3 years, the very first comment would resolve a piece of OP's mystery. I'd bet a whole lot you got the idea from this Tumblr post. It's been around for a long time. Wait, hold on, you're like 50% there. I remember seeing this post on Tumblr, then looking at the notes, and someone commented a show that did this. I think that's when I watched it. Can I give you like half a point, lol? Someone proposed looking through the notes on the original Tumblr post in order to find the name of what OP saw. But since it sits at nearly 300,000, it'd be more than a daunting task. But luckily, this Tumblr post did spark a whole lot more details in their head. OP's edit added it was likely an anime, they watched it on a shady illegal video streaming site, and although they never finished the show, it sat on a tab for a while before they unfortunately closed it out and completely forgot about it. Then suddenly, last night, as I'm in that weird half-dreaming, half-awake state, my brain decides to remind me that show exists. And there is a specific scene in the opening that flashed in OP's mind after it all started coming back. One of the characters was a girl whose personality was your typical airhead trope, and she grins while throwing up a peace sign. Her friends are in the background, and after smiling, she joins them. She was one of those comedic relief characters that you know will die to push the plot farther. After her death, the scene just has her friends in the background staring at the camera from a distance. It seems to be a pretty elaborate thing for a brain to conjure up and think it's watched before, but like we've already mentioned, it's obviously a possibility, which OP is aware of and honest about. Like, I'm positive they aren't purposely making shit up. The question still stands. Is this an especially obscure anime that exists somewhere out there, or a figment of OP's imagination? Others have the same memories, but memory can be one hell of a feeble thing. Unless it's ever explicitly found, we will never know. Disturbing homicidal Pingu stop-motion parody video. If you grew up in the 2000s, I'm sure you have a handful of terrifying online memories from your childhood. OP wanted to find one of theirs. They prefaced that it was not Lee Hardcastle's Thingu, and were going to try to describe the video to the best of their ability. The rest of the post read, "This was in the early days of YouTube around 2006 to 2008. The memory of it has stuck with me because of how much it disturbed me ever since I saw it when I was around 10. The video was stop motion and very impressive. The video starts off innocently with Pingu and Robbie, the seal, playing with the beach ball. They're laughing and having fun. Then, Robbie accidentally knocks the ball into the water. Pingu gets really angry and unalives Robbie by no-limbing with a chainsaw. I loved Robbie, so this is the part that upset me most when I saw this as a youngin'. Then it transitions into an entirely different location and scene, which has Pingu and his mother playing a piano. Something sets off Pingu to become angry again. I think maybe it was his mother yelling at him for playing the piano wrong, but I could be misremembering things. So Pingu unalives his mother by slamming her into the outer rim of the piano, where the strings are, and slamming the lid of the piano onto her. Then he goes to play the piano, and when he plays the keys, his mother's blood comes out of them. I'm aware that this sounds like a bad creepypasta, but I figured this was the late 2000s when edgy humor and disturbing content on the internet was just the standard, and people didn't give a damn about kids' feelings on the internet. After the Elsagate stuff happened, I'm assuming the video isn't likely to resurface again. Does anyone else remember this video or have any idea what I'm talking about? The video was remembered. This user saw it on YouTube, but was unsure of where to find it anymore. YouTube was the source of traumatizing Pingu for OP as well, so it lines up. Hopefully it's still around. There were some old, fairly popular fan edits on YouTube I love that are just gone now. So it was just a matter of hunting it down, assuming it wasn't deleted without anyone archiving it. Which sadly is an evident possibility, but it isn't impossible that it is still somewhere. User Dejected Angel recalled it, albeit a bit different. I remember a different first part, which has a wrongly colored Pingu and some other character looking at the camera with Pingu's beak falling off from time to time, and the other character having to reattach it. In fact, it's probably the first of 3 parts in the video you're looking for, the other 2 being what you described. The piano bit, now that I remember, though I thought it was his father who threw Pingu into the piano and killed him by playing it. OP had no memory of the beak reattaching, so suggested they watched different compilations that included the piano bit. Since after this user mentioned it, the father throwing Pingu into the piano sounds like it could be correct. admitting their memory was fuzzy. Someone else was actually looking for the same video, but only the Pingu and Robbie segment, as they had never watched the piano murder. So it seems these disturbing Pingu parodies were likely often posted in different compilations of sorts. Redditors suggested Thingu, despite it being OP's second sentence that it wasn't. Listen, I understand they're trying to be helpful, so I don't want to come across as like an asshole or anything, but come on. Second sentence of the post and you didn't read it? Gorementer found a similar crude Pingu claymation, which funnily enough OP remembered this one as well after all. Gory Pingu sure was a beloved niche back in the early days of YouTube. When time passed with seemingly no answers or even a mere lead, OP returned with a promising update. They found a comment on a Lost Media wiki forum thread of someone who had been actively searching for another Pingu video. Since it's on topic, this reminds me of another amateur Pingu stop motion I'd like to find again. I believe it was called Pingu Battle, but again, can't locate the video. It was 2 shorts in one. The first was with Pingu and Robbie. I believe Robbie accidentally breaks Pingu's ball or some other belonging, and Pingu sadly walks away. He then comes back with a chainsaw and cuts Robbie into pieces. The second short was Pingu playing the piano with what I believe is supposed to be Pinga. He tries playing a solo, but Pinga is making a bunch of annoying noise in the background, so Pingu picks her up, puts her inside the piano, and starts playing a piano rendition of the Pingu theme song, blood splattering from the piano. I believe Pinga comes back as a zombie and unalives Pingu in his sleep. Anyone remember this? Yes, Mothman, others do. Still, all we had was a group of people that remembered this vulgar Pingu parody, with no luck in being able to find it to feast our eyes upon it. But OP would go on to make a second update. Huge update. I found the first part of the video here with Pingu and Robbie. I haven't found the second half with his mom and the piano yet. If the video title is anything to go by, it appears to be Swedish in origin, and credits Ocean and Bosse Melon 2006. Maybe that's a lead. Clicking on the link brings you to a now unavailable video. I've followed this post for quite a while, so I saw the video when it still worked. I don't know if it's a country thing or if it was deleted, but I can't watch it anymore. Thankfully, it was archived on Wayback, where we can see the Robbie and Pingu chainsaw video. So we end off this video on a more positive note where only half of the mystery remains, and hopefully the other piece is eventually found. I'm sure we all have vague, near unsettling memories from childhood of something strange we watched. Sometimes all it takes to find it is a simple Google search, but Google wasn't cutting it and this user had to turn to Tip of My Tongue. Kids show. It scared me so bad. What was is? I'm just gonna assume the title is a typo. They're from the US and in their late 20s now, putting the era they saw the elusive show between 1994 and 2000. It scared and disturbed them as a kid, but couldn't for the life of them figure out what the show was. OP wrote, "It was from a library. My mom used to take me and my siblings, and would allow us each to pick out a few VHS tapes to watch back at home while she took a nap. This particular time, I remember digging through the usual assortment of Disney and Blue's Clues cassettes, when I found something that caught my eye. From the cover, it reminded me of Sesame Street, or maybe the Muppets. I thought it would be a good choice and brought it home. I was probably 5 or 6 at the time, though I'm not 100% sure. When I got home and Mom went down for a nap, I popped it in and watched it. And I don't know, maybe it's just one of those weird, not scary things that in retrospect isn't all that bad. But what I remember still makes me question it. It was short, like a small series of episodes maybe. It was puppet-like. The main character was a kid, and I think his skin color was yellow, or yellowish. Anyway, the kid was sick, and was being left home alone. I think a lot of the things in his room were puppets too, but I'm not certain. But what I remember most vividly is that somehow, in some way, his stomach had like a mind of its own, and could talk. At some point, his abdomen opened up like a puppet's mouth. But it was all slimy and gooey inside, with strings of ick connecting the two lips. I remember being both sickened and morbidly aghast at the display. So my question is, what in the world was I watching? I've never been able to figure it out. Slimy, gooey strings of sentient stomach is not exactly what a 5 or 6-year-old wants to see after taking home their library pick. Going to the library to choose a movie or playing in the kids area is likely something not a lot of kids experience anymore, but I know I have some core childhood memories of exploring libraries. When suggested Whimsy's house, they said it looked familiar and scoured through a few different episodes that had to do with illness but never came across the right clip. Divot1955 asked if it was the nightmare-fueling show Mr. Meaty. And although OP agreed it was disturbing, this wasn't it either. The series Gerbert was brought up, however, another user contested that Gerbert wouldn't have gone as far as to have an opened up stomach exposing inside guts. Gerbert himself does look similar to the boy in OP's mystery show, and it helped them recall the character being in a bed surrounded by friends, toys, tissues, or possibly something else, but the bed had a crowded feel. The movie Meet the Feebles made them wonder if what they saw wasn't actually intended for children, but that an employee put it in the section due to the cover. And it wasn't New Zoo Review or The Puzzle Place. The only other detail they were able to conjure up was the character was in pajamas, which they pulled up to look at their stomach when it, opened. Gosh, I almost seem to remember the stomach like eating a tissue or something. Rather grotesque for a children's VHS tape, and I'm hoping we'll be able to see it for ourselves one day. Before we move on to the next entry, since this video is all about Reddit posts, I wanted to plug another subreddit, r/BlueChinGuy. This pertains to my own mystery that I've been trying to solve for years. User Title Rose was kind enough to make a sub for the search, so if you're interested, feel free to join. I'll link it below along with the post featured in this video. The internet seems to love a good old unidentifiable piece of media. This one is incredibly round. The saga began in January of this year when user ClassumPlanet kept seeing a car with a decal of a mysterious character. They couldn't figure out who or what it was, and turned to the subreddit. It's an incredibly round character. Its body almost looks like a circle and has 2 flappy ears. Kind of like a dog. If I recall correctly, it has its tongue sticking out. It reminded them of Teddy from Persona, and this was their rendition from memory. Their first thread didn't yield many results, but suggestions included Mama Shiba, Pom Pom Purin, or even Boo, but none hit the mark. Only 10 days later, they'd cross paths with this car again, this time getting a closer look, and returned to Reddit with an updated drawing. They noticed it was wearing overalls with the hand holding the overall straps. It's not obvious if the character is sticking its tongue out or if there's a big zipper at the top of the overalls. The vinyl decal is white, so there's no way to know what color the character is. This second thread received much more attention. Common guesses were a Mr. Men and Little Miss character, Bert, the Yoshi's Island boss, and Number 2 from Kids Next Door. I think that was probably the best idea, but none of these were it. Then there were much more obscure and specific ones, like the 1982 World Cup mascot, or SpongeBob's Mrs. Puff drawing, which actually does have a decal on Etsy. Seemed very likely this could have been the answer, but their post remained open. Finally, they snapped a photo. Their new post read, "Hopefully 3rd time's the charm." Now, what's funny is their depictions didn't ring any bells for me, but the decal itself looks extremely familiar. I want to say I'm conflating Gourmet Guy from Paper Mario and some other thing, but I'm not entirely sure. Despite having photographic evidence this time around, still no one was able to figure it out. People see wildly different things when looking at it. Interpretations include a clown, Raggedy Ann, the number 27, fat cat with an attitude, or a dog licking its butt. I don't even really think it is a dog, but I also couldn't tell you what I do think it is. Hopefully someone out there is able to identify this, or OP will luckily cross paths with the owner outside of their car and be able to ask them. Whether it's the origin of Mario victim number 1, camera heads, or the most well-known search for the Jeff the Killer image, creepypasta-related lost media continues to plague us. National Oven 81 remembered a creepypasta they read years ago about a man who killed an angel. As an avid fan of horror internet content, they favored hearing about urban legends and ghost stories rather than creepypastas, but in 2010 or 11 decided to give him a shot. Jeff the Killer had come out a couple years prior, and they wanted to see what all the fuss was about, so headed to the creepypasta website. Then a story intrigued them. It was along the lines of a hunter who lived alone, in a cabin in the woods. One day after shooting through the bushes, he hears an awful screech, and the sound of something dropping. After he goes to check what he shot, he realizes he killed what seemed to be an angel, but it was very off, is how OP described it. It didn't seem like an angel, but had wings like one. The hunter then ends up being haunted or tormented by God, in religious visions that were all horrifying compared to the actual biblical depictions. Although they couldn't remember exactly how it ended, it was quite long and well written. They recall an image of bloody wings that was attached to it, but don't know if that was a picture they saw somewhere else. An additional detail is the angel may have been humanoid in appearance. They ended their post with, "I know it's vague, but has anyone maybe seen or heard of this before? I did searching, but only found the creepypasta of the Soviets killing God or something like that, which was a rabbit hole in itself. Any help would be much appreciated." Soviets Killing God is another lost creepypasta that I actually helped find if you want to watch a video on it. Thank you so much to this person for sharing it in the thread, by the way. But that isn't what we're trying to find anymore, and now we have a whole new religious creepypasta to hunt down. That same user found The Angels Burned, which follows a similar theme, but was made about a decade too late and isn't the same story. Character Blueberry44 thought An Unwelcome Audience, which was posted to No Sleep, sounded vaguely like what OP was describing, but this wasn't it either. The details reminded Frostbeard of an episode from the 2000s anthology series, Masters of Horror, titled Cigarette Burns. It follows a movie theater owner who is desperate to make up $200,000 to save his theater. He's hired to find the only existing copy of a rare French film that was destroyed after its first screening, as it caused viewers to go insane. He finds a chained man with wounds from angel wings, and says his existence is bound to the movie. Then after the main character listens to an interview from the director, he starts experiencing disturbing hallucinations. Finally, he figures out what happened in the film. It contained the sacrifice of an angel, which in turn basically haunts and mentally torments anyone who views it. It makes them homicidal. I don't know if the whole rare piece of media that made everyone go crazy was already a trope in 2005, but I'd assume not. If you've read your fair share of creepypastas, this has become a cliche, so it was really cool to see it predating internet horror. With the plot focusing around an angel and it causing hallucinations, it makes sense if OP had mixed it up. This wasn't the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is what inspired the unknown creepypasta. Biblical and psychological horror are both pretty fascinating to me. I don't think I ever legitimately read this specifically, but I feel like I've come across something that's comparable. Sitting at only 30 upvotes, the post didn't gain significant traction. Maybe someone will remember the story and that it'll end up being found. In celebration of the Backrooms location being discovered, let's talk about a liminal movie that user AJ Deadshow watched on Netflix around 2008 and could never find again. It took place in a strange neighborhood and felt surreal. The movie doesn't have much action or drama in it. It's got a certain quality to it, that je ne sais quoi that begs a term to be coined for it. They said it's that weird liminal sort of feeling you get when watching certain movies, and compared the vibe to Wrist Cutters. Like, things are normal, but they feel kinda off. It seemed like a normal neighborhood, but it was very quiet, with not many people around. The protagonist was a white male who was likely in his 20s or 30s. OP is well aware how vague those details are, but knows it was one of the first things they watched after streaming came out. For plot, there might have been portals, or that people were disappearing without explanation. It was something weird. It's worth noting the storyline moved slowly, and OP isn't sure if the entire movie took place in this liminal neighborhood. They turned it off in the middle with plans to come back to it later, then were never able to track it down. They added an edit with further recollection. It had a similar visual aesthetic to Vivarium, but wasn't exactly scary or even dramatic. It just felt depressing and f***ed with their mind. It seemed like a low-budget film coming out of a smaller studio, with no familiar or famous actors. Their most distinct memory is a character being out on the suburb streets and staring at the houses for a long time. The lighting indicated it was either in the early morning or shortly after sunset. The environment likely had a green hue, with the houses not being a typical color either. Its energy was dreamlike. You can probably imagine the way it felt, and visualizing it only makes me want to see the film more. Echo R1 said it sounded like one of the adaptations of Stepford Wives or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but it unfortunately wasn't, nor was it Donnie Darko. Someone asked if there was a weird cop neighbor, because the description resulted in them having a movie at the tip of their tongue, but they were likely thinking of separate things. None of the characters in OP's mystery film stood out at all, to the point where they wondered if the protagonist was completely alone. JD Superman knew it was a shot in the dark, but suggested Gummo. OP replied, "Nope, nothing so stark or memorable like a kid eating spaghetti in a bathtub in there." Considering they didn't finish it, part of the recount matched up with the beginning of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and The Truman Show, but neither were it. A great guess was the Edward Scissorhands neighborhood, considering it has become a widely known liminal space image. Obviously, the rest of the movie doesn't line up, though. Mulholland Drive definitely fits a dreamlike quality, but just like all the other ideas, the movie has been too obscure for anyone to pinpoint yet. Foxy the Kid found an archived list of everything that was on Netflix Instant Watch in June of 2008. Literally our savior, but there's deadass 4,500 things on there, so, it'd be a lot more convenient if someone simply remembers it. With such scarce information, it may be difficult to solve, but I don't think it's impossible by any means. Scary animated TV short for children. This memory has haunted user Scenery of Doomsday for years, and are desperate to find it. They think it aired on Playhouse Disney in around 2005 or 6, but are from Italy, so there's a chance it was European. They wrote, "It's drawn in a very soft, pastel-like style. The characters are a bit round, and the dominant color is light blue. All characters are human. The focus of the plot is on this small child, not sure if it's a boy or girl, who has a nightmare out of guilt. I think because they're not doing something they should be doing, or something like that. In the dream, you first see the child on their father's bike, sitting behind him, and the father is pedaling, but he has no facial features. Like his face is just a blank circle of skin. A swarm of bats flies in front of them as a transition, and the child gets home terrified, and sees their mother washing the dishes in the kitchen facing away from the screen. It cuts to the child, seemingly relieved, and then back to the mother, who turns around, and she too has no face. I have no idea what this is, and at this point I'm starting to think I dreamt it, but I've been looking for it since elementary school, with no success. I tried using all the keywords I could, but nothing. I have such a vivid memory of seeing this on TV at night. I couldn't have made it up. Can anyone help me, please? Thank you in advance." Media that contains anyone faceless is pretty unnerving, and I can imagine seeing it as a child would be even more so. User ATJB said there was an episode of Round the Twist where everyone was replaced with blank faces, but the closest I could find is when this kid gets cursed with a small mouth or something. Regardless, OP is sure it was a cartoon, so it couldn't be this. OK Good 455 asked if it was an episode of Nightmare Ned. which quite literally is about a boy who has surreal nightmares about his problems, with some surrounding guilt. Although they'd never heard of it, and it didn't get an Italian release, I wanted to be completely sure that Nightmare Ned never had any weird faceless moments. I skimmed through every episode, and unless I somehow missed it, it wasn't there. It must be something else, and I do believe it's real, because I found this post from a different Reddit account 4 years before this one. This user is from the US, so it isn't the same person. Their post is titled, "Dishwashing Mom with No Face." They remembered it being a kid's movie or cartoon, but said, "For all I know, it could have been a horror film, or a particularly upsetting commercial." They give the same recap. It's a dream sequence. The protagonist goes into the kitchen, the mom is shown washing dishes. All you can hear is the sound of the running water, and the squeak of the dishes. She doesn't speak. She turns around, and it turns out she has no face. A plausible suggestion was when Ed from Ed, Edd and Eddy has a nightmare, and after his mom is at the kitchen sink, it's revealed she has Johnny's face. It made them consider this being the answer, or an homage to the actual scene. But it doesn't play out the same way that the other poster recalled. There's no bike ride or bat transition. One of you watching has to remember this, right? I'm just hoping someone can place it, or more importantly find it, because there's a surprising amount of lost media from Playhouse Disney. 2000s rock song. On August 2nd, 2019, user Arctic Moon 8 turned to the subreddit with a clip of a song. Shazam won't give you the answer, and YouTube won't copyright it. They heard it in a promo for a TV information program, but forgot the specific title and only had the recording. Let's assume this isn't a repeat of the EKT incident. Immediately, the song sounded extremely familiar to me, but I think it's just generally reminding me of songs from similar genres. These comments are honestly confusing because people were comparing the artists to the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Blink-182. The band brought up the most was Tool, and while I get where they're coming from, it doesn't legitimately sound like them. But coincidentally, as this person pointed out, this was posted the day Tool finally got on Spotify. I found it funny that this Soundgarden comment got downvoted because despite the fact it isn't Soundgarden, I think it sounds closer to them than Tool. Multiple users thought it could be a Christian rock band, and maybe that'd be a good place to start looking. Cheese Orbiter guessed it never had a label and was a project from one of the show producers. But the mystery deepens, because OP found a man from Germany who was looking for it as well, except his sample was from a different source, and is of the intro. Arctic Moon 8 is from Sweden, so it may be a European band. The song was never identified, and the post has faded into complete obscurity. I wanted to bring attention to it, hoping someone can identify the tune. Disturbing film about a guy SAing a mannequin/puppet. Like the title says, this one sure is disturbing. User CrackSmoker3 watched Rabbits by David Lynch.
It is 11:15 p.m. It is dark outside.
And it awoke a memory from within them, saying both have a similar tone. They believe it was a fall or winter night in 2019 when they saw it. After walking home from being out with friends, they had to wait inside a building at the bus station, because the buses were delayed due to heavy rain. They recounted, there was a TV on the wall directly in front of me that was playing a video about some kids playing lacrosse or something. I wasn't paying attention until I noticed it had switched to one of the creepiest videos I've seen in my life. The video had this awful, eerie, slow piano music. The notes sounded disjointed, like the song had every third note wrong, clearly intent on disturbing the viewer. There were 3 characters: the faceless man, the mannequin, and the puppet. The movie was long. I watched it for at least 30 minutes minimum. It would swap from scenes of the 3 of them hanging out, going about daily business like eating breakfast or reading books, to more disturbing things. The mannequin had a face and was a man. The puppet seemed to be a girl. The faceless man, the only real person who wore a mask to hide his face, would sometimes touch the puppet girl and make the mannequin watch. The piano music would become more disjointed during the touching, and the faceless man went out of his way to draw it out as long as possible. This film has been occupying my mind since I remembered it, and I cannot figure out what the hell I saw that night. Also, let me clarify. When I say puppet, I don't mean like a Muppet or anything with a controlling mechanism. It was more like a human-shaped doll. If you've ever seen those photos from 2000's internet of guys stitching their own love dolls, it was more in line with that. The faceless man never talks. Neither do the puppet or mannequin. While I saw the movie in 2019, I have no clue when it released. The style and camera quality make me think late 90s. I'll answer any questions as soon as possible if people are interested in helping me find this. Well, we're keeping up a faceless theme in this video for some reason. Searching puppet touching didn't yield any helpful results, and they don't think there were any commercials that played during it. They added an edit, saying they were gonna draw what the characters looked like, hoping it could strike someone else's memory. Crack Smoker followed through with this, and the drawing made it even more unsettling to me because the puppet/doll's eyes are sewn shut. The man had a mask made out of silky material and might have had eye holes. The mannequin was an old man with a cigar. OP made an update post a little over a week later. They added a few details, like confirming the man is the only real person they saw, and if he's around 6 feet, the mannequin would be about 5 feet, and the puppet 4. It wasn't a typical horror movie. They described it as, if a friend of mine said, "Hey, let's go see a horror film," and took me to this, I would reconsider my friendship with them. And to clarify, it wasn't animated or stop motion. This was live action. The doll and mannequin never moved without the man visibly moving them. User Butterfly Deflect thought it sounded like the 2018 film Possum, but it was significantly lower budget than this, and isn't it. Possibly in Michigan has a very odd vibe.
She put her poodle one time in a microwave oven to eat it? Yeah.
And the antagonist, Arthur, looks like some type of puppet mannequin thing. This short film's plot isn't anything like what was described though, and isn't it either. A few other ideas were love object, marionette, and pin. Unfortunately, none hit the mark. I think this is the kind of thing that suggestions are pointless because if it's found, it'd be incredibly obvious that it was it. When asked about other elements, OP said it took place in an artificial-looking house, and the furniture was scaled down to the size of the puppet and mannequin. The closest suggestion for camera quality is Adult Swim's short, Too Many Cooks. There is a big elephant in the room, as Glass Dollhouse pointed out. Playing this in a public building is incredibly strange, and would lead to wondering if this was made up. Some blatantly asked if it was a creepypasta, and they said no. The theory that makes the most sense to them is it being aired on public access. Obviously, they'd try to keep up the jig, but assuming this isn't fabricated, my morbid curiosity wants this freaky thing to be found. Movie, 80s horror. Over 30 years later, it haunts me to this day. Want to solve a decades-long mystery? Tangled Apart saw this movie between 7 and 9 years old, so around 1987 to 89. I was home seemingly by myself, but I'm sure my parents were around there somewhere. It must have been a Saturday or Sunday. because it had that vibe you get when it's the middle of an afternoon and some random movie is on channel 33 or 39. My wife recommended I do this immediately. I've been in existential pain over it for all these years. I've Googled. I've written/posted in other subs and groups. I've asked friend after group of strangers I'm meeting for the first time. I even remember asking the folks from Ain't It Cool News from way back in the day about it. Nobody has any idea what the name of this movie was or if it ever even existed. All I know is it terrified me. Traumatically. I mean, it's over 30 years later and it still F's me up. Thing is, I only have 2 memories of 2 scenes from this movie. The first memory is of a teenage girl, a light-skinned girl. She's walking in a park. There's Spanish moss. It's kinda gray out, natural lighting, and there are other people around. She starts walking past what looks like a stone castle. The camera angle is in front of her, but suddenly she stops, looks up, and a brick is thrown down at her straight into the camera's POV. And the next shot is a close-up of her, dead, with the side of her head bleeding out with the brick next to it. The second memory takes place in what is either a dorm room or a hotel room. Somebody opens the door, and what they discover is a teenage boy with bed sheets jammed all the way down his throat. He's dead, obviously, and the room has a kind of yellowish-brown hue, like aged film a bit. And that's it. That's all I remember. But these memories are so vivid, I was affected so greatly, and I've carried them with me all these years. I still get queasy when I think about them. I hope someone here can help me. It truly is the greatest mystery of my life. Searching for years on end for a piece of media that's so obscure can feel agonizing at times, and I've become invested in seeing this get solved. They were asked if it was a slasher, but it didn't feel like a masked killer type slasher film. More so like someone was getting revenge on their peers while on vacation or on campus itself. OP wondered if the castle could have been a college building, and the Spanish moss might have been part of a park. It isn't Happy Birthday to Me from 1981, however, the film gradient is spot on. User Indigo Shift wanted to know if the actors were British, since they remember awful British horror movies that sounded similar to the mysterious film, especially The Castle. It was so long ago that they can't say for sure that they weren't British, and this could be a search idea. OP has made 2 posts on Tip of My Tongue, and while their most recent one received significantly more attention, no one has identified it. Suggestions included The Redeemer, Son of Satan, The Dorm That Dripped Blood, Student Bodies, along with so many others. It'd take forever to name even half of the proposals, and none were it. The description made user Mystery Radish think it was a giallo film, which are typically mystery horror featuring unique and gruesome deaths, with an unknown killer who's revealed at the end. To me, this sounds more likely than being British, but there's no way to know. In August of 2024, Toothy Cow came across a 1988 trailer for Bad Dreams, which was promising because it shows a dead girl laying down from the perspective of a tall building. It turned out the building shot was someone who fell, and not from getting hit with a brick from above. OP added, "This search has become a bad dream though." On their post about it on the horror sub, user Foreign Time commented, "Maybe cross-post this to a Lost Media subreddit. Those people can find anything." Lost Media YouTube channel, so close enough. If any of you can solve this over 30-year-long mystery, please do so. 80s obscure media can be extremely difficult to pinpoint. r/Tip of My Tongue currently has 2 million members. If only a fraction of those members post, and if even only a fraction of those go unsolved, there are endless mysteries just waiting around that we'll presumably never know the answer to. That doesn't mean you should just give up. I don't care if the Tip of My Tongue subreddit collectively hates me because of all 10 million of my Blue Chain Guy posts, which is my own mystery I've been trying to solve for years now if you're new here. I'll never just stop trying. Our brains are like huge memory cards that consume media throughout our entire life, so it's impossible to remember every piece, let alone the name of some weird thing you saw as a child. Thankfully, we live in the age of the internet where people can help put these mysterious memories to rest. I truly love making this series because even if it's a small chance, there's always the possibility that these videos will help solve someone's long-lived mystery. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've linked below each post because maybe someone out there has the answers for these people, or maybe they will forever be unsolved. Either way, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video, even though I know it's a lazy one. I promise I have all new original content coming up, but I sincerely appreciate anyone who's watching. If you like this tip of my tongue Reddit stuff, I've planned out like 4 different videos relating to the sub that I'm gonna disperse across the channel, with of course plenty of other things sprinkled in. So be on the lookout for all of that if you're interested, and thank you.